Sup, y'all? It's me. It's your boy Asmongold, and it's been about a week now, more like 10 days, since Legion's come out, and I think that I'm finally ready to do some sort of a meta video and talk to you guys about, I guess, how the expansion's been doing thus far. And also, Blizzard put out a couple of other numbers regarding sales for Legion, and I wanted to share that with you guys, so we can also compare that with the previous expansions to see how it stacks up. So, the first thing I do want to share with you guys is talking about those numbers. Basically, the big number here is that Legion did sell 3.3 million copies on the first day that it came out. Now, I'm assuming that also takes into account pre-orders, because that's the same amount that Warlords of Draenor had, and both of them, Warlords of Draenor and Legion, again sold 3.3 million copies on the first day of the release. To me, this was a huge surprise, because Warlords of Draenor, obviously, Mists of Pandaria, people are like, okay, fine, you know, Blizzard got out of that panda bear bullshit, you know, they're gonna go back to the old game with the old warlords back in, you know, Draenor, which is Outland, so people were thinking about Burning Crusade, and so everybody came back for Warlords of Draenor, and I think it had the most hype built around it for any expansion. And so after Warlords of Draenor didn't really turn out very well for a lot of people, whenever Legion was announced, I heard a lot of people saying, well, you know, I'm not going to buy this until it actually comes out. I'm going to wait until the first content patch. I want to make sure that Blizzard, you know, is actually going to follow through on their promises because of what happened in Warlords of Draenor. And so it came as a huge surprise to me that despite all of that, you know, all of those people who were very, very apprehensive about buying the expansion, that the sales still match what it was, in my opinion, probably the most hyped up expansion that I've ever seen since, I mean, maybe Wrath of the Lich King because of you know, Arthas, but besides that, I mean, like, Warlords of Draenor had a lot of hype behind it. I mean, like, let's be real. And so to see that Legion matched that even on the first day was a huge surprise, especially coming off of how many people who were disappointed in Warlords of Draenor, and how many people told me personally that I'm not going to buy Legion because of how bad WoD turned out. So that was a really, really big surprise, and I think that a lot of people were, it's obviously a pleasant surprise. More people that play the game are more people that can watch my videos, right? So I was definitely really happy to see that. You go out in the world, you do world quests, and you see other people around you, and I think that that's one of the big things that Warlords of Draenor was missing out on, is that it didn't capture that real MMO collective and I guess like not collective, but you know, where everybody works together, you know, and that collaborative experience that really kind of, you know, like that's what people always say, like feels like an MMO again or something like that. It's kind of a meme now at this point, but what people are really trying to say is that, like, you know, you go out in the world and you see like some kind of guy and you see some other guy standing next to that guy like a monster, and you're like, yo, do you want to kill this guy? And then obviously you both do because you've got a quest for it. It's a world quest, and then you go kill him together. Now, maybe you never talk to that guy again, maybe you do, but the important thing is that the option's there. And I think that was what the game always really had. And giving people those avenues for creating those social experiences and social bonds was what made Vanilla WoW really, really good. And I don't really want to start talking and reminiscing about Vanilla WoW or like Burning Crusade too much, but I do want to make that clear, is that I do believe that despite terrible mechanics, boring raid fights, you know, unbalanced PvP, everything else didn't really matter because people logged on and they played with their friends, and I think that's really what it was all about. And if Legion can recapture and rebuild that community that Warlords of Draenor and Mists of Pandaria and even Cataclysm to a large extent has done a very good job at subverting and breaking down that same community of working together and, you know, accomplishing common goals together and finding allies out in the world and just doing things together, the more that I think Legion is going to be able to keep the subscribers that I think that initially gained. So obviously Legion did have a lot of hype around it. It's not like, I'm not trying to say that Legion didn't have any hype around it, but whenever you compare it to Warlords of Draenor, I don't really think it had the same amount. So having the same amount of sales numbers on the first day was a huge amazement to me. I was very, very surprised. Now, of course, Blizzard's not going to tell us what the subscriber numbers are anymore, and I'm not really okay with that. I would rather know, but I don't think that we ever really will know, and obviously I think that was because WoD sub numbers went down so far, it would make them look bad if they kept reporting it, right? But it seems like they've kind of gone out of their way to say everything around how many subscriber numbers they have in regards to how well Legion has done, I guess, like monetarily or financially. So that was a really, really great thing for me to see. I thought it was awesome. And, you know, whenever I play the expansion and whenever I do anything in the game, and even whenever I talk to other people, the people's responses and people's reactions and people's experiences with Legion kind of reflect that amount of sales. And if I was to guess, by the way, I just wanted want to interrupt myself a second ago, is that I think that it's the subscriber numbers are probably around like 8 or 9 million. That's what I would guess, maybe 10, but we're not really going to know. I would say that it would be very surprising if it was under 6 or 7, but somewhere between 8, 9, or 10 million would be what I would assume. Now, what this really comes down to is that how the expansion is going to retain players. Cataclysm, I'm looking right here. Cataclysm also sold 3.3 million on the first day, and it was widely regarded as the first huge misstep for World of Warcraft. Lost like 800,000 subscribers in like the first quarter or something like that. And, like Mists of Pandaria even sold well. Warlords of Draenor sold very, very well. But after that initial hype was built up and people realized that there was nothing really besides that initial hype, subscriber numbers went back down. And so I think what a lot of people are wondering, including myself, is that how is the replayability of Legion going to turn out? And that's one of the big questions that I've had. Now, for me personally, I've been going through everything. I think I have. The game's been out for since last Tuesday, and that was like Monday night. So I guess let's just say Tuesday. And so today's Friday, it's Friday morning. And so I played for about 100 hours. Okay, so I played on average probably like 8 or 10 hours a day, on top of like making videos and all kinds of other stuff too. So I've been spending a lot of time on the game, and it's been very fun. I've enjoyed it a lot. It's been great. Obviously, not everybody can do that. Unfortunately for them, maybe, I don't know. Probably not good to play for 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, but it's definitely fun to indulge in something that you enjoy. So anyway, point that I'm trying to make here is that what I'm really trying to figure out here and trying to understand is that we're really in 1 month and 2 months and like more like 4 or 5 months from now, what are people really going to be doing? Are they still going to be doing World Quest? Are they still going to be doing the Nighthold? Are they still going to be doing Emerald Dream? Is Karazhan going to be out by then? The halls of the Trials of Valor or whatever, the 7.1 raid. What's really going to keep people engaged with the game? Because that's what I think that really. That's what's been lacking ever since Wrath of the Lich King, in my opinion, is that there's not a progressive endgame that you can move forward and move from step to step to step. And I think that Mythic Plus Dungeons are going to give people, that same experience. Now, I do have two kind of big concerns with the expansion, and I do want to address those right now while I'm talking about things that, might influence, replayability. Now, number one, I've said this, I beat this horse to death, and now we're beating it into the ground, is that I think that the RNG elements of the gearing process and getting the legendaries and everything like that are unfun. I don't really like them because it takes away the correlation between effort and reward. I think that you do harder content, you should get better gear, period. Right. It's not really too complicated, but I can understand why Blizzard's trying to do it to create a gambling feeling, but I'm worried that it'll probably backfire in the same way that it does with Diablo 3, where players, in economics, if any of you guys have ever taken an economics class or a marketing class, you probably have heard of the 80-20 rule, where you get 80% of your business from 20% of your customers, and 20% of your customers give you 80% of your business. So what that really kind of comes down to is that you, in Diablo 3, for example, you spend 5% of your time getting, 10% of your time getting 90% there in terms of how good your character is. And then you spend the other 10% of you getting your character, the other 90%, sorry, I'm confusing myself a little bit here. But basically, it takes you 90% of the way to get 10% of the last point, but the first 10%, or first 90%, you can get that in the first 10% of the time used. Sorry, that was kind of confusing. But basically, people reach a plateau where in order to go to that next level, from going from, let's say, 885 gear to 890 gear, or 890 gear to 895 gear, is going to be so insurmountable because it's basically completely based on RNG and random gearing that they could potentially reach a point where they feel that there's no real point to continue and progress to a higher difficulty or to keep going in any sort of a facility because the chances of them getting an upgrade are so low, they're basically zero. Now, if you want to compare that to players who have already obtained all of the upgrades in the game of, let's say in Dragon Soul or something like that, or Mists of Pandaria, and compare that to what it is, to what it would be with, the plateau element with, RNG gearing and everything, I think that there are going to be less people, there were less people then that actually reached that gear plateau where they had everything that they needed. And now, since obviously gear is going to be more available to more people are going to reach that plateau and feel like there's not really a way for them to have any sort of steady path to progression. I would really like to see Blizzard add some sort of ability in there to where you can increase the item level on your gear, even if it's very time consuming, like somehow using like a bunch of artifact power to empower your gear by like +5 item levels or something like that, something to where you can negate bad luck. And I think that if you give people that ability, in the same way that Diablo allowed you to, I guess if you guys haven't played it, you wouldn't understand this, but you can basically get gems in Diablo, level up the gems, and then you can break down the gems and apply them to a piece of gear to give that piece of gear more main stat for you. And it's very, very good in terms of like a very long-term type of playability. And so if people already have pretty much all the gear that they can get, they can still work towards those gems and have an alternate path of progression, which is what I think artifact weapons are going to do as well. I've never really been a fan of the artifact weapon, but I like the artifact weapon system. If it wasn't attached to a weapon, I would love it. But even though it is, I still think it's been, I guess, like pretty decent. Now, the other thing that I'm kind of concerned about is, of course, the element of repetition. Diablo 3 also has the same element, and you guys might be wondering why I'm drawing so many parallels over to Diablo 3. So many of the systems that we're seeing in Legion, and also some of them in Warlords of Draenor, have been ported over from Diablo 3. The random legendary drops, the Mythic Plus system is basically a copy-paste from the, the Greater Rift systems in Diablo 3. Artifact levels are in some form or another Paragon levels. And so there are a lot of things that Warcraft has taken from Diablo 3, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But one thing that I've always used, and I guess that this will be probably my last like in-depth Diablo 3 analysis, or I guess like analogy here, is that Warforged gearing in WoW, and like Warforged gearing with like sockets and everything, is a lot like gearing in Diablo 3, except for you don't have Kanai's Cube. Kanai's Cube is basically where you can reset one stat and like re-roll a stat over and over, and so we don't have that in WoW. And so that replayability, it seems like you're kind of at this unsurmountable RNG wall that you can never pass through. Now, going back to what I was originally saying with the I guess like the repetition difficulty, once you complete like Mythic Plus on like level 5, Mythic Plus on level 6, 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, there's going to be a certain point where completing Halls of Valor on a harder level is not going to feel very rewarding. And that's what I think is going to happen. Now, personally, I don't really know when that will happen. I don't know how many people will hit that wall. I don't really know. But what I do know is that in Diablo 3, whenever the season comes out, there's a huge amount of people who are playing it. Like, everybody's playing Diablo 3 for the first season. And then after about a few weeks, and then a month especially, the player base completely drops off. I've been, in multiple Diablo 3 clans. I've been, playing the game a lot, off and on. And so I've seen this happen a lot. And also you can see that reflected through, like, Twitch viewership and stuff like that. Obviously, that's not the best way to determine the success of a game. But I would say that the metric going up and down that much would be some sort of an indicator. So I'm kind of worried about the replayability of just going over and going through the same raids, the same dungeons over and over and over. What I'm really hoping that Blizzard can do is allow the raids to become progressive again without making the initial raids worthless, basically. One thing that I really thought was a disappointment with Warlords of Draenor, and also with Mists of Pandaria and even Cataclysm, is that as soon as they implemented the harder modes, or the easier modes of the harder raids, like Dragon Soul normal mode was better than basically any gear you could even get in Firelands. So there'd be no real reason to go back to Firelands, and so the game lost that element of replayability. And I would really like to see them, now that they have LFR, and I'm assuming that they're not going to really get rid of it. I want them to, but I don't think that they will. Now that they have LFR, if they could have a baseline gear for that whole all the way through the expansion, and then let the actual raids be progressive in terms of difficulty and also gear, I think that would allow players to have a much more progressive experience, rather than having basically the easier difficulties of the harder raids that come out later on in the expansion invalidate all of the other previous content that came out before it. So I would really, really like to see that happen, and I think if that happens, along with some other social improvements, I'd really like to see the Guild Finder system improved, a number of other things. I think that they should make something like clans, where you can be in multiple clans but only one guild, something like that. I think that would be really cool too, and just like more things to implement, emphasize and build social connections and social interaction. And the Mythic only dungeons, I think, have done a very good job with that. I know people who have made friends through that, and like we've actually recruited a couple people from our guild from doing Mythic Plus dungeons, and like that whole idea of doing that, like that hasn't really happened for me ever since Burning Crusade. Crusade and we take some new healer through Shattered Hall Heroic and not CC anything. So it's really, really cool to see some of that stuff come back, and I've been very much enjoying Legion. There have been things that are very frustrating, but despite not having Legendary and not getting a whole lot of 850 gear with sockets or anything like that, I'm still enjoying the expansion very much. And so what I'm really concerned about, what I'm really curious about, is how the expansion is going to grow and build over time. How people are going to, see the expansion, what's going to keep somebody logging on 3 months from now. And I think that if Blizzard can conquer that, we could see not only the expansion and WoW, not completely just lose subscribers, but maybe continuously gain subscribers again. That's kind of a pipe dream. I don't really know if that'll happen, and it's also very unlikely. But it was also very unlikely for Legion to be this successful on the heels of Warlords of Draenor. So I just really hope that everything turns out. I hope that you guys are enjoying the expansion as much as I am as well. So I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. If people really, really like the expansion, I want to know about it. If people really, really don't like the expansion, I actually kind of want to know about that even a little bit more, so I can see what people's complaints are, so I can look at the game and, maybe incorporate that into other videos that I make that are like this one. So anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I got. I hope that you enjoyed. I, have definitely enjoyed, I've enjoyed making this video. This is a good video. I've enjoyed this. But on top of that, I've enjoyed the expansion a lot, and I hope you have too. So thank you for watching, and like, comment, and subscribe.